As professional drivers at All Star Transportation, we've all been given and trained on student drop-off procedures. I'd like to talk to you today a little bit more about those drop-off procedures and some of the reasons behind all of the steps in each of those procedures. So we'd like to start with first, when you're given your route sheet. Every time you're given a route sheet, you should take a few minutes and review that route sheet. You should know where each of your schools are located and how to get to them. You should also know where you're exactly going to pick those students up at each school. You should be familiar with the drop-off locations, if you have students along that route that might have any special medical conditions, if you have any railroad crossings on that route sheet, or any other special information that you should know about the roads that you're going to be driving on. Remember, you should use only your designated drop-off locations when dropping off your students. Once you arrive at your schools, you should know how to seat your students. We'd like to try to sit all the younger students up front if your location and your policies allow it.
Hello. All right, my kindergartners towards the front, please. Bye-bye.
You should also be familiar with who belongs on your bus. If a student tries to get on your bus without a note, you should not allow them to do that. While you're still at the schools, you should communicate with BASE, and we can contact the schools for you. If a student hands you a note, make sure that it's signed by the appropriate office staff or the principal of the school. A good idea for a spare driver is to maybe ask an older student to help you with the route. Usually there's somebody more than happy to help you get them home safely. Of course, the best route driver is the regular route driver. Our students and our parents count on that regular driver to be there every day. It helps the students to feel safest when they see that familiar face in the seat. Okay, so now we're ready to go. Once we get out onto our route and we're approaching our stops, remember, at least 100 feet before, we're activating our amber lights. Speed control and rear zone control means we're tapping our brake and we're slowing down. We're communicating to everybody out there that we're approaching our stop. Make sure to also use the LLLC. Look ahead, look around, leave room, and communicate. We should be looking ahead at our stops and notice if there's any hazardous conditions near the stop where we are going to be dropping off those students. Some of the possible hazards that we should be looking for are strangers that are lurking around near those stops. Anybody that's not usually there, we should take note of. Are there any stray animals roaming? Is there police activity, fire activity? Anything that could prevent us from stopping at that location or make it unsafe for us to stop there. We should also make note of any seasonal conditions at that stop. Is there a big puddle where we're going to be dropping off the students? How about snowbanks or ice? Again, when in doubt of any situation, we should be communicating with BASE and let them tell us how to approach that stop or stop there safely. Our procedure says that we should be pulling to the right and stopping 10 feet before our stop. By doing that, we're already protecting our students and making sure that that's going to be a safe stop location. We're blocking any cars or anybody from passing us on the right so that when we do drop off our students and they get out of the bus, there's not a car trying to pass us on the right. By stopping 10 feet before the stop, it also allows us to watch those students, count them as they leave the bus, count them away from the bus, and make sure that they're safely out of those danger zones before we move the bus. Our procedure says keeping our hand on our horn. Our hand is on our horn the entire time, and as drivers, we all know why it's there. If an emergency comes up or we need to get the students' attention or a passing car, we blow our horn. But what about our students? Do they know what it means if we blow our horn while they're outside of the bus? Again, we should be educating our students and tell them if they hear our horn, they should get back to a safe location. If they're crossing the street, they're getting back to the curb that they came from, and let them know that that would be the safest thing for them to do. We don't want them to freeze in the middle of the street and look at us like, what's going on? How come you're blowing your horn as a car's blowing our red lights? If your bus is equipped with an override button, you should be using it. It's a safety device that not only protects us, but our students while they're on the bus. The override switch allows us to activate those SOS lights without opening the door. Therefore, the students are not trying to get off the bus until we're sure that it's safe for them to get off the bus. And once they're off the bus, we close the door, leaving the SOS lights on. Again, it keeps the students that are on the bus still on the bus, and it doesn't allow anybody else to board your bus while you're trying to watch your drop-off procedure and make sure that your students are safe. I'd like to talk to you about now one of the most important parts of our student drop-off. It's knowing your policy for your location on what students can get off the bus without a parent and which ones we need to see a parent or an authorized adult for. It's very important that you go over this information with your managers prior to you driving your routes. You need to know what parents or what guardians we need to see. It's different for every location, so again, the best way to know is to ask your manager. If you get to your stop and you don't see an authorized person there for that child, then you shouldn't be letting them off the bus.
I don't see your mom out there. I have a student and there was no parent here for him. Can you notify East School that I'll be taking him back?
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, go take a seat. I'm going to take you back to school.
As a spare driver or a new driver, you won't know what students need to see an adult. So the first thing you need to do is ask the students who's in kindergarten, who's in first grade, whatever grade level applies to your location's policy. Then you need to have the parents that are waiting at the stop come to your bus and ask specifically for each child so that you become aware of which parent belongs to which child. As you drive that route, within a couple of weeks, you should become familiar with who's there for what child. Never open that door and let that group out until you see that parent and you know which one is there for those specific children. If you see an unauthorized person there or a person comes to your bus and tells you that they're there to pick up a student from your bus, please make sure to communicate with BASE. Do not let that student off the bus. We are going to call the school and make sure that that's an authorized adult for that child. You may have to ask for an ID. And again, the proper way to be communicating with BASE and to that person outside of your bus is to keep that child safe. You're doing what's right for the child. Before letting the students off your bus, remember to remind them to take at least 10 big steps straight away from your bus before they turn in either direction.
Make sure you do 10 big steps in front of the bus and wait for my head nod before you cross. 10 big steps in front of the bus, wait for my head nod.
This allows you to see them and them see you. And that way you can make sure that you can recount them and that they're out of that danger zone before you move the bus. Again, 10 big steps straight away from the bus. Make sure you're reminding your students before they get off the bus. We should always be head nodding to our students before they cross the street. Again, 10 big steps in front of the bus so that they can see you. You can check traffic, make sure it's stopped in all directions, and then eye contact and a head nod to those students that need to cross the street. We can count them across, 1, 2, 3, and then recount them when they are safely across the roadway. Once you've recounted all your students and you know they're all out of the danger zone, now we're ready to unsecure our bus and leave our stops. Remember, 5-second rolls. 5 seconds can save a life. We should be doing them from every stop location, and they are not optional. So after all of your drop-offs, your final drop-off for each route, Remember, we're pulling our buses over to a safe location and doing our safety check. You're walking through your entire vehicle while you're still out on your route, checking for any children that are sleeping or hiding on the bus, any belongings left on the bus, or any damage to your bus. This is not where you're doing your child checkmate. Remember, this is just a safety check of your bus while you're still out on your route.
Now you're going to see a small part of the Type 2 special needs student pickup and drop-off procedures. Special needs transportation requires additional training and knowledge of the students that you're going to be picking up and dropping off. In most cases, the drop-offs are done at the student's house. Monitors should always be seated at the furthest point behind all the students on the bus. After the driver stops, activates the SOS lights, and secures the bus, the monitor should get up and walk to the child to assist them in taking off the belt and getting out of their seat. Driver should only open the door to unload after seeing the parent approach the bus. If the parent is not visible, the driver should call base for instructions and the child should be returned to their seat. Monitors assist the students down the stairs and to the parent. If a student needs to cross the street, the monitor must do this with them. In most cases, it is recommended we drop off on the same side of the street as the child's home is on. Let the student do as much as they can by themselves, but monitors should be standing right by if the student needs assistance. Once the child is secure with the parent, the monitor should return to their seat, tell the driver we are all set. Driver can now prepare to leave by checking mirrors, unsecuring the bus, deactivate SOS lights, and perform the 5-second roll. After the final student drop-off out on your route, both the monitor and driver must do a safety check of the vehicle before returning to the yard.
So remember, like all of the procedures that were given, they're given to us by the state of Connecticut. Procedures should be done exactly as they're written every single time we do them. It's important that you make sure you do every step. I hope that giving you some of the reasons behind each of these steps help you to understand how important it is. If you have any questions or concerns about drop-off locations or students on your bus, make sure to speak to your managers and communicate to base if something comes up during your daily routes. Thank you.